Madinah Institute for Leadership and Entrepreneurship, MILE.
Now?
Yes, sir, we can see your screen. You might have to do a full slideshow mode.
Okay.
Perfect. We can see Overcoming Leadership Isolation, Mr. J. Stephen Leven.
Okay, perfect. All right, then are we ready to begin?
The floor is all yours. You may proceed.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to speak with you from California. I want to tell you just a little few things about me so that you get some perspective. For over 30 years, I have worked with emotional intelligence and with understanding and helping executives to understand how to perceive the inherent radial intelligence around them. I've worked for some of the largest company brands on the planet. I've worked in 7 or 8 different countries. I have been a monk teaching yoga and meditation for over 10 years and then moved into the corporate world. I want to be able to start this presentation with a little bit of an orientation. I invite you to get the most out of this program, and the more you will pay attention without multi-focusing, and the more you listen with this sense of openness to the content that you're about to hear, the more you will be able to understand not only from your intellectual mind, but also from your emotional intelligence. So if I can invite you to put your work aside, listen with your heart and mind, and to really listen for what you don't know at the present time, to be able to understand what phrase, what thought, what triggers, whatever aspect that may be a new thought, an intuitive thought. What I'm encouraging you to do is to be present intuitively, not just intellectually, and the more present that you can be emotionally intelligent and intuitively, the more you will be open to be able to understand that which you have not been able to understand from only one limited aspect or portion of your brain. The goal is to better see, to better understand what you don't know, because everyone around you talks to you about and looks to you for what you do know. And if you are like the thousands of leaders that I've spoken with, who are either leading divisions, running companies as chief executives, or their owners, it's lonely at the top. And we all know that you may, in reality, be him, or you may be her. But in reality, you know that it is lonely at the top. And who do you have to really understand what you see? You have a tall view, but you're misunderstood. And this sense of being misunderstood happens regardless of what title position you're in or industry position you're in. I want you to hear some of the various titles that we have, and I'd like, as I read these titles, for you to think, if you could see the intelligence around you, if you could draw out the intellect and the vision of those people around you, if you could know what they know, what would you be able to see? Today we have present HR directors and vice presidents, marketing managers, CNOs, CMOs, CEOs, and vice presidents of groups, supply chains, senior product managers, contract engineers, project controllers, construction managers, business developers, chief engineers of banking, a finance manager. We have chief nursing officers. We have a team of 6, and welcome to you, in the field of healthcare, and we have an assistant chief operating officer. regardless of the title, regardless of the industry, if you're on top of your people, you may be the best there is. The planes may represent the problems that you're facing, and only you may be perceived as being the one who can solve the problems. But in reality, you are missing an opportunity to understand what the problem looks all around you. In this picture, King Kong is facing one and one direction only. He does not have radial perspective. If you look in the up-hand corner of the picture, you'll see that he has blind spots to what's behind him. And regardless of your position, this is an opportunity for us all to listen intuitively, emotionally, to try to sense, record, write down, and take notes to be able to awaken an openness that allows us to see things from a fresh perspective. Only you can deal with problems, right? In many cases, your people have better, newer, fresher, more innovative ways of doing things. And without a dialogue and a conversation of transparency, you are blind to those new and better ways. In between the battles, when there's not the activity and the intensity, the loneliness of isolation creeps in, and we know what others don't know, that no one around us understands the trials, the responsibilities that we face as leaders of our companies, leaders of our teams, or leaders of our divisions. Isolation destroys leaders. It destroys life, it destroys business, and it destroys the enjoyment of work. Biases affect outcomes. Now here's again where I'm going to ask you, put aside what you're working on in the background, open your heart, open your mind, and listen and ask yourselves, how are my biases? How may my biases? How have my biases affected my outcomes? How have those outcomes affected my judgment, my decisions, my actions, and the final outcomes? And how may my biases be affecting the judgment, decision, and action and outcomes of those around me? John Lennon said, life is easy with eyes closed, misunderstanding what you see. If we were talking together in a group, and the group was intimate, and we were open as a group of individuals and business leaders, what would you say if I asked you, what are you currently misunderstanding? What misunderstanding is causing friction? What misunderstanding is causing tension? What misunderstanding is causing more problems than solutions? Living is easy with eyes closed, misunderstanding what you see. What do you not see that you need to see in order to become a more effective leader? Blind spots. What are yours? Let's return to this slide. Take a moment and write down 3 quick words or notes of what are the top 3 blind spots that you think you suffer from, and right next to that, write down who you may rely on around you to be able to get feedback to determine, are those blind spots really real? Do you really see? What is the feedback, the critical feedback that you need to be able to eliminate those blind spots? So ask yourself, what are my top 3 blind spots if I had to take a guess? And what is the feedback that I need to be able to determine what those blind spots are and to correct them? Business owners and chief executives that I've surveyed, and across the years I've surveyed thousands of them, what they tell me is that blind spots are the result of assumptive attitude, presumptive nature, ego, no perceived relevance, tunnel vision, too much work, and low situational awareness. Take a look at these and scribble down, write down which of these may apply to you. And once you've done that, ask yourself, which of these 7 areas might apply to your people who you believe are not able to see what they really need to see in order to reach next level success? What are your teams not seeing? How are they blind to working together across other people, across resource allocation, across communication, across profit? What keeps us stupid? No matter how smart we are, no matter how smart we think we are, blind spots and isolation creates pockets of ignorance and stupidity. If I were to ask you, which I'm going to fill in the blank, write down the word that first comes to you in this blank. Jay, I have to admit it now that we're talking, what really keeps me stupid is, and what you admit here helps you define your self-limiting beliefs and the impact on affecting business outcomes. So once again, if I had to admit to myself, given all that I know and all that I'm responsible for, what really, really keeps me stupid is, and again, what you admit here helps you define your self-limiting beliefs. If you carry this conversation over in caring ways to those that you rely on and work with, not to accuse them of ignorance, but for a moment to say, if you were, what really keeps you ignorant? What is it that you're not seeing? Let's talk a minute about stupid. Fill in the blank. Everybody has them. My blind spot is. What you admit here helps you define, again, more self-limiting biases and their impact on affecting business outcomes. I can't tell you how many times across so many different industries I've asked leaders, and when I've done 360s evaluations around them, my last question of 13 questions is always, tell me, we're talking about the leader. If he had or she had a blind spot, that blind spot would be, and I can assure you that every single time there is silence, and what comes is remarkable with regard to the clarity that others have that we may not have, that we need to have in order to define what our self-limiting biases are. Why? Because self-limiting biases that are created from what we don't see affects our business outcomes. What 2 factors keep us stupid? What 2 factors hold us back? Maybe it's, fill in the blank. Maybe another factor that holds me back is when I, fill in the blank. Here's again where I'm asking you, if you're listening to this peripherally, just with a side note of your mind, and you're not listening in a fully integrated, attentive, present way, this is going to pass over as just intellectual concepts. What I am encouraging, what I am inviting, what I am requesting is that you listen not only with your intellectual IQ intelligence, but with your emotional intelligence, so that that which you take back and that which comes from this webinar, you can begin to stimulate and share and open those around you up, collaborate better, cooperate more, and enjoy the intelligence that you have around you, and everyone in the process feels that they are contributing as a member and a vital member of the team. 2 reasons why we are stupid. The first is our blind spots, and the second is our emotional biases. Emotional biases block critical feedback from those we rely on the most. I'm going to repeat this again. Emotional biases that we have block us from the critical feedback that we need from those we rely on the most. And here comes a stunning irony. And I want you to ask yourself if you see the irony as so many others come to see. Irony surrounds us. Here's a perfect example. Is your phone out of service? Give us a call. But we don't operate in an irony-free zone. We operate here. The more powerful we become, the more dependent we are on others. The more powerful we become, the more dependent we are on others. The more we need those around us to increase, to scale, to grow, to sustain our success, then they need us. And the other critical irony that I want to share with you is that we don't know what we don't know. And another great irony that I want to share with you is that we live in one of the most information-rich periods of the world. And yet, ask yourself this: how feedback-rich are you? How feedback-rich are we? We live in an information-rich world, but we're feedback-poor. Without feedback, we can't understand our blind spots. We can't understand the biases that create our blind spots, and we lead as half or quarter leaders. Biases mute conversations. So I ask you, what are the quality of the conversations that you have around you? Are the conversations 2 ways, or are they just 1 way? Are you existing as a leader in tell mode because everyone looks to you for the answers? Or do you exist as a leader in ask mode because you understand that if people can think through your intelligent questions, they come up with their own answers that are relevant and in many cases better than the answers we provide, and that asking enables them to understand for themselves rather than to be told. Telling is the least effective way to communicate ideas, and communication of ideas is really nothing more than the passage, the transmission and the transferal of belief and intelligence from one person to another. It is not merely the transmission of words. It is the transmission of intelligence and belief from one person to another. When this occurs, our teams, our people, those we rely on, our vendors, our partners, our bosses, our peers, those that report up to us, are engaged. They're cooperating. We're collaborating as a team. Biases distort reality. What are they, and how do they form, and how come biases are so sticky, and why are our biases so very hard to see? Biases mask fears. So I ask you, write down, if you will, from the center of your intelligence, from your heart and your mind, 3 ways that your biases mask your fears. And write down in the solitude of your thinking, what fears do you have that may be creating biases that enable you to lead blind instead of fully visioning? How are your biases? How may your biases be masking your fears? And I'm hoping that some of you afterwards will tell me or raise your hands or be able to write down your responses so that we can see how attentively are you listening. Are you listening from both sides of your brain or just the analytical part of the brain? I'm inviting you to awaken your emotional intelligence and understand the issue behind the issue. How do your biases mask your fears, and what are those fears? Fears feed self-limiting beliefs. And I will ask you, what self-limiting beliefs are holding you back? What self-limiting beliefs that you have are holding you back? And what limiting beliefs do you have about your people and your teams that may be holding them back? What limiting biases do you have that may not be engaging as intelligently, productively, resourcefully, profitably as you can with those that you're working closest with and those that you need in order to grow, continue, and scale your company's success, your success professionally, and the success of those around you professionally and personally? Fears feed self-limiting beliefs. What are your self-limiting beliefs? Fears drive need. Need drives biases. Now here again is where I'm going to ask you to listen as close as you possibly can. For over 30 years in 10 different countries, I have worked with executives in 10 different languages, in all positions, in all stages of their career. And I have found these to be true. Fear of being taken advantage of drives a need for being in control. Fear of social rejection drives a need to verbalize ideas. When you verbalize ideas, you're listening less to the ideas of others. Loss of security and the fear of it drives a need to accommodate. The need to accommodate may prevent you from understanding what the real answer is because you're concerned about approval of those around you. Fear of criticism of work drives a need to follow rules and procedures which, if the fear of criticism of work is high enough and the need for following rules and procedures is exaggerated, you may be creating or contributing to a culture that is lacking in imagination, is able to protect what they're doing, to ensure delivery, but not to create, not to inspire, not to engage, not to awaken new, better, more productive, more effective, more enjoyable ways to be doing things. Fears drive need. Which fear is most in you? Of all those I meet, these 4 fears are the primary fears that drive biases. Do you have a fear of being taken advantage of? Do you need to be in control? Therefore, essentially communicating to your people that they have no responsibility and everything is up to you. Are you King Kong? Do you have a fear of social rejection, which pushes and drives you to verbalize ideas, listen less to those of others around you, so they begin to disengage and cut themselves off and shut themselves off? Do you have a fear of loss of security and a need to accommodate that drives you to accept situations and solutions and conditions that if you didn't have a fear of security, you would take the risk to be able to grow to the level that you need to? Or do you have a criticism of work that has a need to follow rules and procedures, and in doing so may shut down creativity, imagination, inspiration, and ideation? Here are the progressive steps into emotional biases. What I'm about to tell you now is philosophy that is over 5,000 years old. Here is how our perceptions shape reality. We see a thing, anything, and in the beginning we just see it. Then the mind steps in and defines the problem or the issue. And then the ego, your ego, our ego, my ego, his ego, their egos, define the issue as my problem. And then we emotionalize the issue or the thing and say, I hate this problem. So ask yourself and write these 5, 6, 7, and 8 points down here. What state of mind are you in when situations become tense, when problems occur? Are you in a seeing state which just observes? Are you in a defining state that just defines? Or are you in an identifying state that says it's your issue, and at that point it begins to constrict you? Or are you in an emotional reactive state which says I like or hate this issue? And I will show you in the next slides that the more we slide down from seeing and defining into categorizing something as personal, as instead of business, the more we move and into an emotionalizing state of making a classification which says I hate or like my reality. I will tell you, of the leaders, senior leaders and chief executives, directors, VPs, and partners that I speak with, the single greatest difficulty besides planning that blocks team efforts are when those leaders look at issues from a personal perspective and an emotional perspective instead of an issue or problem perspective. And I will tell you what I believe you already know, that real leaders solve issues and problems. They do not deal with personalities. Personalities may be positive, personalities may be negative, personalities may be productive, personalities may be unproductive. Real leaders solve issues and deal with issues and problems. They do not deal with emotions. And I ask you, to what extent are your emotions preventing you from dealing with the objective issue and the problem? Here is how, again, 5,000-year-old East Indian Vedantic philosophy that I studied for over 20 years as a monk. Here is how we slide down the slippery slope into emotional attachment, into lack of clarity, into fuzzy thinking, and into a dim sense of situational awareness. At the top of the sliding board, metaphorically speaking, we are just observing a situation, an issue that occurs. Then we begin to classify and define that. Once we define that, as we become more attached, we personalize it, and in the personalizing, we emotionalize. When we can walk back up the slide from emotional attachment and identification, up and away from personalizing that which is happening around us, to defining and observing, the more we can observe without emotional attachment, the more neutral we are. The more neutral we are, the more clearly we see. The more neutral we are, the less biases we have. The less biases we have, the less clouded our judgments become. Here are the progressive steps, once again, into emotional biases, how our perceptions shape our reality, and how our reality becomes blinded from the totality of vision that we can see if we saw with unemotional eyes. We see a thing in its pure form. We define the issue or the problem without attachment. Then we define it as my problem or their problem or your problem or his problem, but not my problem. And then we emotionalize it. And we say, I don't like this problem, I don't like your problem, and we lose effectivity. We see, then we define, then we personalize, and then we emotionalize. So I will ask you, good people, what stage in this slide are you? Are you at a stage of seeing, defining, personalizing, or emotionalizing? Seeing, defining, identifying, and personalizing, and emotionalizing. And as you watch your people work today, and you see how they fall into one of these stages, our job as emotionally intelligent leaders is to come out of emotion, come out of personal attachment, and ask ourselves, what is needed here? Not what I want, not what I think, not what she wants or she thinks, but what is trying to happen here? Then we regain the neutrality of objectivity. Any questions so far? I'm sure if you have them, please do write. And I'm curious to hear what you are thinking and what this is stimulating as we move forward. How we react to what we see defines us. And I'm going to say it again. How do you react to what you see? And how does how you react define you? If you can draw a circle on a page and inside that circle write, how has one reaction defined a situation that was less positive than it would have been if you had not reacted the way you reacted? How we react to what we see defines us. How are our reactions defining us? Us to ourselves? How is our reaction defining how we see others? And how are our emotional and personal reactions defining how others see us? And I will ask you, do you know from the feedback that you have how others are perceiving you? Do you know how you are perceived by others? If you're not, there are critically important conversations that are waiting to happen to enable you and your teams to react less and see more clearly. The root cause for all bias, your emotional identification and attachment. The root cause for the biases of those around you, their emotional identification and attachment. And so we as emotionally intelligent leaders, in order to be able to see and not be isolated, must understand how are the emotional identifications and attachments of ourselves and those around us preventing us from seeing what really is, because we're seeing only what our biases tell us is. I hope you're understanding from an intuitive understanding from the both sides of your brain what some of these impacts will be for you as leaders. What are the cost of biases? They flatten our perception of the world around us. They control us. We do not control our biases. The biases we have control us, not we them. Biases entrap us. The limitations become reality, and those realities become fixed. Biases separate. How are your biases and those biases of your teams separating you, your teams, your work, What needs to happen in order for the siloed thinking of those around you to become more connected? Biases of ourselves and those around us choke throughput. They slow productivity. They create inefficiencies. How are biases choking the throughput of those around you? How does perception influence reality? You have a bias, which is your story. That bias colors the reality of the situation around you, and that reality becomes your reality. What biases as business developers, as project managers, as finance managers, as chiefs of banking, as supply chain vice presidents, as CMOs, CEOs, COOs, CNOs, as healthcare professionals, as chief nursing officers, how is your story interfering with the customer, interfering with how you really need to operate with your partners? Here's how we get to neutral. Neutrality ensures communication is real. Go to solution mind, not emotional mind. How often in the course of a day do you encourage the objectivity of those around you to go to solution mind, not emotional mind? Address the issue, not the person. Practice detached mindfulness. Understand if you're neutral or if you're emotionalizing or personalizing. Observe more. React less. Ask yourself, in this situation, regardless of what it is, between 2 or 30 or 300, what is trying to happen here? What is the issue trying to tell me? Rather than not see what the issue or the problem is that really needs to be solved because you're caught in emotionalizing and personalizing. Ask more. Tell less. The more we have to tell, the less our people understand it for themselves. Are you allowing your people more think through time? Are you encouraging more creativity, more engaged understanding, more initiative from those around you? Are you allowing them to think through things, or are you imposing upon them your thinking? Find the why hidden in the questions around you. Why are your people asking you the questions? Don't react to the questions. Listen to the why the questions are. Understand and hear the unspoken motives that are driving your people. Seven more ways to practice neutrality. Again, neutrality ensures communication stays real. Neutrality ensures bias-free clarity. Clarity ensures sound judgment. Sound judgment ensures effective, productive, profitable outcomes. Pause before responding. Breathe through your need to jump immediately into a situation and tell everyone around you the way it should be, rather than allowing the solution to emerge through some of the vital key people around you on your team. Practice speaking in neutral terms. What is the issue or the situation? Don't point a finger or blame individuals. Lose the words I, me, you, we, us. An example. What needs to happen here? What's not being seen, as opposed to what are you not seeing? What could be done differently, as opposed to what should you be doing differently? What aren't you seeing, as opposed to how can we see this better together? Lose the personal words. There are those around you who, when you use I, me, you, we, or us, you're actually shutting those people down because they have fears of criticism. And when you objectify by using what's trying to happen here, as opposed to what are you not doing, you're allowing them to feel more secure, and in that security, a solution will come quicker. Always practice ACBD. Always consult before deciding. You don't need to be a democracy. You can make the decisions, but if you're not bringing your people along to those decisions and in those decisions, they're feeling left out, they're not engaged, there isn't collaboration, there is forced cooperation because of your position, not because of the inspiring leader that you are. Don't decide before consulting, even if the choice that you need to make as a leader is one that differs from those around you. It is a completely different experience, as I know you know, when people feel listened to. So therefore, number 7, listen more and impose your point of view less. Staying neutral. Create a behavioral accountability program for yourself and others. Evaluate your behavior on a daily basis and your key people, and ask them to assess their behavior. Are they observing, defining, personalizing, emotionalizing? Determine how often you are and your people are in which state of observing, defining, personalizing, or emotionalizing. Measure the outcome result and the cost and the impact when you see things clearly and there's less friction, tension, confusion, or lack of clarity. Your thoughts? Like to know. Just because you're the big cheese, and now I'm going to move very quickly here. In America we have an expression which the person in charge is the big cheese. Doesn't necessarily mean you're the biggest brain. Is your brain smarter than the team brain? Imagine what your team brain could look like when smarter intelligence is collective and the collective brain is working as one organic, intelligent organism. What if all your people were valued contributing data points? What could the organizational brain come up with? How much faster to market? How much better quality control? How much more effective communication across your teams? How much stronger would your partnerships, your vendor relationships be? What would you know if you knew what your vendors were trying to tell you? If all your people were valued contributing data points, what would the organizational brain look like? Is radial intelligence smarter? Why? It's more predictive. It predicts quicker and more accurately about the future because you have radial intelligence from those around you. It's predictive, adaptive, focused. It adapts to change when needed. It's focused on actions needed now and the right actions because it's coming from the people who are in the center of the situation, not just from your perspective, which may be elevated but not on the ground. Bias-free leaders look and act in similar ways when gaining critical information from others. And I'm going to ask you, which of the following ways do you need to express to become and be seen as a more effective, inspiring, transformative leader? Let's try it one more time, shall we? Are you? How so? In what ways does your vulnerability express itself? How agile are you, though you may be expecting a lean process from others? How flexible are your teams? How balanced are you in situations under pressure and stress? Or do you lose self-control? Biased leaders look and act in similar ways. Please take the time to circle and write down one area that you and your people need development on to become better leaders. What's missing in your leadership? What's missing from your team's intelligence? What's missing to know more? What's missing in the group mind? What could you and your people see if they shared radially the intelligence that they have? Right timing and right decisions depend on coordinated effort. Intelligent, responsive, understanding of individual roles and the mutual dependencies of those roles upon each other. And do your teams operate like this? And do they intuitively know how to work together to be able to increase the sense of urgency, the time to delivery, to be more productive, to be less confused, less ineffective? What is your cost for a really bad mistake? And I invite you all to sit down in a planning and solitude time and identify your last bad, no, really bad mistake. What was the cost of that bad mistake? In productivity, in product, in sales, in quality, in time to market. Calculate the exact lost cost across your people, your process, and your profit of that bad decision. And then ask yourself, why was that bad decision a bad decision? Was it because you weren't observing? Was it because you were personalizing? Was it because you were biased and emotionalizing? What was the bad decision made from? What caused it? And then determine the cost of a really bad decision. And then begin to develop in the culture of your teams around you in your company for your teams to tell you what their costs have been of a really bad decision. And understand how really bad decisions come so that really bad decisions can come less. I hope I'm being clear here. The cost of bad decisions affect outcomes, affect success, self-worth. They make the difference between success and staying ahead or falling behind. We talk about always what's right. How often do we share the cost of what our bad decisions are and how those bad decisions came about so as to eliminate bad decision thinking, bad decision judgment? Again, write down any questions you have or comments you have. Some of you will, for the first 20 who write after this program to me, and I'm going to have my email address up. I will, through Skype, invite you into a personal one-to-one session where we look at your responses to your leadership isolation survey. And I can tell you that of those that have walked into the sessions with me on the phone or in person, ours will of course be Skype, what they may have thought was their bias, at the end they realized it, in many cases it wasn't what they thought it was, and the corrective change has been significant. And biases end clear judgment and behavior. I invite you as professionals, as leaders who care and have integrity about the teams, the products, and the services that you're responsible for creating, as leaders that care about your customers, your vendors, and your partners. End poor decisions, end isolation, before your isolation ends you. Feeling isolated as a leader, there really is only one person that can end that. It's by you inviting others and their feedback as to how you can see more radially the intelligence that's around you. And overcoming leadership isolation is available, and we certainly can talk about it as a program or a one-to-one. And I invite you to email me here at jay@jstephenleven.com. Those of you, the first 20 that write with the subject, yes, I'd like a one-to-one Skype call, I will look at your responses, and together we'll look at how your isolation can end so that you can become the leader that you want to be, productively, profitably, efficiently, inspiringly, and transformatively. Are your teams isolated? Let's end it together. You have my email address. I am J. Stephen Leven. Company is Win Thinking, and I'm here to work with you to end isolation and bring greater clarity to what you do, to how you see your people, how your people see you, and to your teams. Now tell me, what questions do you have, and how can we bring you into the conversation? Mr. Jaffrey, are there any questions?
Yes, Mr. Leven, let me just open the floor. Folks, we are now open for the Q&A. You could either put your questions in the question box, or you could raise your hand. There's a hand icon available on your webinar console. If you click on it, it should give you an opportunity to speak to Mr. Leven. I see there are questions posted in the box already, so let me go straight from Brother Muhammad Saif. There's a question. No matter we try to be fair, human beings are biased in nature. What you are trying to do here is to minimize the influence of being biased on your outcomes, don't you?
Yes, that's true. We are biased because we are emotional individuals, and we have an intellectual and emotional intelligence, and we are trying to minimize bad outcomes, poor judgment, foggy, unclear thinking by looking at the feedback of those around us that we rely on to minimize the biases and increase the clarity so that we can run more transparently intelligent business. Yes, it's absolutely true. You understand.
Let me
now what I would invite you.
Yeah. Okay.
Now what I would invite you to ask is, how are you going to put this into effect for your own teams, for your own people?
Let me go. We have some
other questions?
Yes, sir. There are a few, so let me go. There's a hand raised, so let me go to Mr. Brother Moeed Al-Dahmin. Brother Moeed, could you please introduce yourself and ask the question? Brother Moeed Al-Dahmin, could you hear us? Okay, you're muted.
No, I'm sorry, I wasn't able to hear the question.
Yeah, I think the gentleman has muted himself, so let me move to the question box once again. We have the question from Brenda Maratinio. The question is, what are some facilitative statements you can make among your leadership team to begin to go do the path of removing biases?
Okay, that is a wonderful question. What is your name, please?
Brenda Martinio.
Brenda, I'm going to role play for you some questions that and some language that you might use. Good morning, Brenda. Nice of you to come and sit with me. Brenda, you know, I've been thinking that I'm very busy, you're very busy, and too often we really don't get to tell others what we think of them. And so I've invited you, and if you wish, I've invited your team, so that we can talk about what I really value in you. And what I really value in you is this, this, and this. And I would like to ask you if we can become success partners, because I rely on you and I rely on what you know. So I'd like to ask you what feedback you have as to how we might work together to be able to address this issue that we're facing more clearly. Brenda, I want to ask you and I want to ask your teams, what needs to happen that's not happening? What are we doing right and what are we not doing right? What is your intuitive sense as to how efficient we're working together? If I saw, Brenda, what you saw, what would I do differently? How could we be working more effectively? What's slowing this process down? What's causing this problem? What is the problem from your perspective? What needs to happen here? You see how I'm treating it as a situation, as an object, and I'm inviting you in to a partnership of success that tells you that I value you and then asks for that critical feedback. When we create cultures that are open to feedback, we receive and are rich in clear information. Does that help, Brenda?
Good. Brenda just commented on your answer. So thank you very much. And let me move to another caller who has raised her hand. It's a regular caller, Dr. Muhammad. Let me just unmute you. Dr. Muhammad Faredi, could you please introduce once again and ask us?
Yeah, hi Jay. Thank you for a great presentation. I'm assistant professor at a public university in Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, based at Riyadh. And my quick question is for the organizations where the leaders and the team. So when the leader is addressing her team where they have different stages, the adult, the child, and the parent stages. So definitely we say that different strokes for the different folks. So sometimes for different folks you need to be more emotional than more critical thinker in taking decisions. So can you elaborate on that point, or can you give your rich experience on this situation?
Thank you for your kind words. I want to return to a particular slide here that is here. In over 30 years, Professor, what I've seen is that there are basically 4 quadrants or 4 types of behavior. And those behaviors are driven by needs, and those needs are driven by fears. And whether we're in project control, whether we're in construction management, whether we're in education, whether we're in program development, whether it's most easily seen many times through a project manager's eyes. A project manager's eyes has to balance marketing, sales, engineering, quality control, product managing, project managing, and finance and operations. All of those different functions have different ways of influencing people, solving problems. They have different operating speeds, different senses of urgency, different ways of multitasking, and different ways of complying. Understanding how we work by asking others, what is your ideal environment? How would you like to work? Understanding, is someone assertive in a negotiation or passive? Is someone optimistic in influencing others and magnetic, or are they skeptical? Are they operating quickly because they multitask, or do they prefer a slower, more stable, more methodical, one at a time, less risk-taking speed? And are they risk takers or are they more fearful? Do they have a need to be in control? Do they have a need to verbalize ideas? Do they have a fear of loss of security? Are they hypersensitive to criticism at work? The more we understand, this is very important, and I'm so glad you brought this up, Professor. I'm going to slow down here and say, mostly what we as leaders do is we work with the what people do. What I'm suggesting, Professor, and I believe you know this, is that we as leaders are most successful not when we work with the what people do, but when we understand how they do. And we are even more effective when we understand why people do what they do. When we understand how those people around us behave, what their fears are and what their needs are, and we understand the why they're motivated, we're able to work more coherently, more focused, and more cooperatively, and more engaged, more transformatively, more productively, profitably, and use our resources in a much smoother, seamless way, and return our cultures to being more open and transparent about the ways that we can work better. I hope that helps.
Yeah, I appreciate your answer for that. And thank you, Ali, for that opportunity.
Thank you very much,
It's
Dr.
wonderful.
Mohammed, for your question.
It's wonderful to meet you, Professor.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. And let me move to the question box as we are pressed on time. We can take two more. There's one from Brother Ilyas Muhammad. How we can differentiate between uniqueness and loneliness?
What an absolutely marvelous question. What a marvelous question. I would ask you what your distinction would be. I would ask others today, what do they think is the differentiation between uniqueness and loneliness? Are there any comments? What can we learn from each other with this question? What is the distinctions between uniqueness and loneliness? How do they relate to each other?
Yes.
Any comments?
Mr. Leven is asking everyone if you can contribute in telling us also about the difference between uniqueness and loneliness. So, Mr. Leven, you may continue because it might take time for people to write their comments.
Okay, so my comment is this.
Somebody wrote uniqueness is different and loneliness is differentiated and loneliness is isolation.
Yes, yes. In uniqueness, we are of common ground. If we create and foster cultures where unique is valued and part of a team. If we encourage uniqueness, we are collective. If we discourage individuality, we are lonely. If unique is considered as a bias to be bad, and there's no creativity or imagination in the cultures and environments that we work, uniqueness breeds loneliness, breeds shutdown and disengagement, where everyone's uniqueness is valued, is drawn out. When we're asking for unique contribution, we bring a sense of self-worth to others, and in that self-worth, we see what they are worth, and the worth of their ideas helps to contribute to the worth of our companies. It depends upon how we value uniqueness. If we're all unique and it's rich like this brain here, then we are collectively in company. If we are a big brain and we are the only one unique, then everyone else around us is shut off. Again, it comes to what does the organizational mind look like that we operate in? And how unique are the people around us as data points? And can we have a sense of more cooperation collectively? I hope that answers the question. I'll return to the slide because I really want you to be able to have my email so that we can continue a dialogue. Anything else?
That really brings us towards the end of the webinar, folks. And Mr. Leven, any concluding remarks that you would like to give before we dismiss out?
I want to invite you, the first 20 that email me saying, yes, I'd like a one-to-one survey review. I'd be happy to, and I encourage you to, you have the survey link to use it, and I invite you into a more open, more clear, more neutral leadership that brings a sense of collectivity and ends isolation, allowing you and the people around you to operate more clearly, productively, profitably, resourcefully, transformatively, openly, inspiringly, happily, purposefully. Thank you very much for your attendance. It has been my honor to spend this time with you. And I rarely get up at 5 in the morning to do a webinar. This was wonderful. I look forward to an ongoing dialogue with you all. Thank you so very much.
Thank you indeed, Mr. Leven, for a very, very intriguing webinar, and really appreciate that you got up early in the morning and spend this time with all of us. And I would like to thank, especially on behalf of Madinah Institute for Leadership and Entrepreneurship, and we look forward to remaining engaged with you. And folks, thank you all of those who participated in this webinar and for your questions. Those of you who have not received the link of the survey, we shall be sending an email to all of those who have attended, link to a survey which Mr. Leven has put it up on the website. So I highly recommend to please fill it out, because it gives you an opportunity to interact with Mr. Leven on one-on-one. So please do take some time to fill out the survey. You should receive this in your email in the next 24 hours. A lot of you have been asking about the soft copy of the presentation. This is available on our community, Mile community, which is community.mile.org. We have already pasted the link in the chat box. We are recording this webinar. Recorded version will be uploaded in the next couple of days, so please stay tuned to the community. With that note, I would like to conclude this webinar. You all will be automatically dismissed. Once again, thank you very much. You all have a good day, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're calling from. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Madinah Institute for Leadership and Entrepreneurship, MILE.